All right, let's dive right in and start texturing our shoe. And I think we'll start off with texturing the outer shell here. So if I go to my surfaces here, it's this guy right here, and it already has a material and already has a material mask attached to it. All right, so let's just go ahead and change the material color, the diffuse color a little bit. Just give it a nice orange tone there. The next thing I'm going to do is split my screen with a preview render window. Just head up to the top shelf there and click on the preview render, progress render button, and get that started. Now the first thing you'll notice is the aspect ratio here of this preview window is the default for doing, sort of a landscape aspect ratio. So what I usually like to do is when I have a preview render open up on a side like this, I usually go into the render item there at the top, and where it says frame resolution, I usually set those the same, so 1280, and that just gives me a much bigger window to view my render in. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add an image, and I'm just going to open up a Finder window here, and I'm just going to drag and drop this guy right on top, and there we go. Now I'll just open up a clip browser panel right there, and we can see that we have the little seamless honeycomb patch area, and it is taking that one image and wrapping it around the whole UV map. However, I want this small little mesh honeycombs all over my surface. So what I'm going to do is go down here to the texture locator edge tab, and where it says horizontal wrap and vertical wrap, I'm going to click the gang buttons that link those two parameters together, and then I'm just going to put in 23, and that should do it. Now I'm going to temporarily turn off that texture that I just added, and I'm going to go up to add layer, and we're going to go down to something fun here. I'm going to go down to processing and over to gradient to add a gradient layer. Now let me explain what a gradient is. A gradient is a change of value or color over the span of a surface, and that change has to be driven by some other value. In this case, the change of color is going to be driven by the viewing angle of the surface, or what we call the incident angle, whereas the polygons that are facing most directly at you are an incidence of 0, whereas the ones at about a glancing angle, that are sitting at a glancing angle, are considered a 90-degree incident angle. So therefore, we can have a color or value change over the span of our surface that changes depending upon how you're looking at your surface. So how do we control the color and value of our material over the span of the surface? Well, we use these two little graphs that are located in the material layer property panel. Now by middle mouse clicking in this little white area there below the graph, we can actually add a keyframe at some location along that graph that's 0 to 90 degrees, and then we can click on the color wheel and then select any color we want. So depending upon where that keyframe is where the color will show up on the surface of the shoe. Now by selecting the keyframe at the 0 degree mark, which already exists by default, I can bring up the color wheel and alter the color of the material at the 0 degree angle of incidence. So as we rotate around in our rendering view, you can see how the color changes as we change our angle of view. I think it's also worth mentioning that you're not confined to using that little graph that's in the Properties panel. You can click on the cog at the top of that panel and open up this panel in a much larger graph editor, which makes editing, I think, a lot easier. Now going back to our honeycomb pattern image that we have on our model, I'm going to go and just click and drag that up and drop it right on top of the gradient. And what that's going to do is that's going to nest that image inside of that gradient texture, and it's going to mask it based on the image that is in there. Now, however, this has an alpha channel on it. So what I will do is go to the bottom where it says use alpha. I'm going to use alpha only. Okay, and now we can see that it has used that pattern to mask out part of that rainbow texture that we have on there, that gradient. So the other thing I need to do here is go back to the top here and invert that image so that the honeycomb part of the pattern there is what shows that rainbow color. All right. Now the next thing I'm going to do is go over to my clip browser here, grab that honeycomb pattern and drag and drop it right below the gradient material right there. And as you can see, it's just wrapped one time around our model. And I'm going to go back over to the horizontal vertical wrap and change those to 23. And yeah, so that matches up with the other one. I'm just going to change the effect now to bump and click bump there. And there we are. And we're done. Now we have a really nice sort of mesh fabric pattern for our base material on a shoe.